See how that works. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and we talk about leadership in the boutique retail world. So think of wireless retail, think of AV, think of appliances, think of stuff that is outside the realm of your big box retail stores, where we're doing more of actual selling, not just products, but typically services that come along with the products to get the full experience out of what we're offering. Uh, and we're typically working with smaller companies, companies that, they typically have less than like 100 footprint. Uh, they're not nationwide. Typically, they might be in a few different states. They call themselves nationwide, right? Uh, they'll say things like we're coast to coast, but we're in 3 states. I say that because I was part of an organization like that where west of Texas, it was just California and they had more locations on the East Coast, and they would say, "Yes, we're coast to coast," but there's literally nothing between California and Texas. Uh, but we typically have the feeling that we don't have the best structure to support us as leaders or future leaders coming on board. And I get where that comes from. I've been part of an organization like that. I was with an organization that was just shy of 200 stores when I joined. And when I left, they were just shy of about 750 locations nationwide. Um, so I get it, right? Because there definitely wasn't any kind of development when I was there. I remember the kind of development that was you had 2 weeks when you got hired to be able to showcase that you could make it, and if you couldn't prove it within those 2 weeks, they spent the next 2 weeks getting you fired. And it was one of those where they didn't fire you; they just really pushed you to quit so that they didn't have to pay unemployment. So I get those practices. I get that kind of culture. I get what that's like, but I'm here to tell you that you have the ability to change things, not just within the organization, but more importantly for yourself and for your team. Okay. I've created material that's been used throughout, the nation. I've had departments created specifically for me to take up new roles within an organization. So it is completely possible. I've created material that's been used in different industries, and I've used it to train not just my people directly, but also indirectly through other leaders and through coachings that I would facilitate for other departments and other leaders that I work with. Um, so it's completely possible to do something that you start for yourself and you grow and adapt it, and it starts to take a life of its own, and it starts making foundational changes to make everybody's life better, right? Because right now, a lot of y'all have a practice, and it's not just you, right? It's not a failure on your part. It just there's a lot that still needs to be done to make things work well. Um, and we're talking about today something that's been hitting home for a lot of people, which is your best sellers should not be your next manager. Okay. Are top sellers great managers? 95% of the time, they're not. And it's not their fault. It's they've been in an individual contributor portion and nobody's developed them, but they want to make more money or they want to have less stress, essentially, right? As far as having to do the daily grind. And they get moved into either, typically, it's not their choice. They get pushed into a leadership role. And then everybody wonders why this great seller is a terrible leader, why they have such high churn rate, why the culture is so toxic at the location, and nobody can pinpoint it. They were great at selling, and all of a sudden they can't teach others to sell. It's not a fault on them, it's an organizational issue. But there's ways to solve that. You have to ensure that you understand what is going on, because otherwise you're breaking your leadership pipeline. You're ruining the illusion of what leadership means for a lot of people afterwards because they see, oh, it doesn't matter that I can help train other people as my peers, but that doesn't mean much because they're only looking at individual contribution. But all the people that get put in there, they have terrible churn. Their operations are horrible. Nobody wants to be at that location. They're all miserable. So we want to change that around. We want to make things work. I want you to be able to train and develop other people because my goal, I I can join an organization and I can do this myself, yes, but I can't do that nationwide where it makes as big of an impact. But by helping you learn to become a better leader and do this, you can do what I've talked about, which is even if you do it at 50% what I can, 1,000, 10,000 of you guys training and developing people in just a slight manner that I'm teaching far outweighs what you guys are currently doing for the better. And I can't do that on my own because when you do that, not only do you make your life better as a leader, but you're training and developing the future pipeline and you're giving the opportunities to other people that not only deserve it and need it, but you're giving more opportunity in the world. And that's what we want to get after. We want to help others become better. And the real way to do it is through training and developing. Now, if your idea of promoting your next leaders is just picking your top sellers, you're not building a leadership pipeline. You're really setting up not just yourself, but your teams for failure. Uh, it doesn't matter that your reps can close the sales when they're the worst possible choice for a leadership role because they can't develop others like themselves. Okay. So we want to look at what leadership development looks like. Now, first things first, sales skills and leadership skills are not the same. Okay. I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. Yes, as a leader, you have to sell your people, right? Because you have to sell them ideas, especially when it comes to change. But the big thing is that it's a different customer that you're working with. So you have to change certain topics, certain conversation styles. You have to learn that from your people. A lot of people move into a leadership role and they think, okay, I'm the manager now. I'm the boss. So they're going to do exactly what I say. That is not the case. Because when your team says, fuck it, and nobody shows up to work, what are you going to do then? You yourself, just like I said, your owners, the execs of the company, do not run the organization because they themselves cannot operate 10, 20, 30, 100, 1,000 stores. They cannot do what the front lines do. So we want to make sure that the frontline teams are being supported as much as possible and that we're developing them in ways that makes them valued and be felt, make them feel like they're being seen and heard. And you do that by training and developing because you do learn from them. You learn what actually does work, what doesn't work. You actually know the stories behind the numbers that are being posted. The KPI dashboards are only a portion of the story. Okay. Numbers tell a story, yes, but numbers can be skewed. We've all seen it. Okay. In our organizations, we've seen it in the news. Numbers can be skewed when the entire picture is not being told. So we want to make sure that we understand selling and leadership skills are different. They have to be developed and nurtured appropriately. Okay. Being able to close the deal does not mean that you can coach someone else to do it. The whole, lead by example, I'm going to lead from the front. I get that concept, but when you're the one who's doing the majority of the selling, when you go in to a location as a district manager, as a regional, and you're spending the majority of your time on the sales floor selling instead of coaching and developing your people, you're not leading by example. You're hindering your team from being able to perform. When you're going into a store visit without an agenda of what you're going to accomplish today, you're hindering your team because you're winging it. You're not training and developing your team to have a system in place to actually be successful. And that's what we want to push on. Okay. The other thing, too, when it comes to leadership is that it requires emotional intelligence, the ability to coach, and then also having some form of accountability. It's not about the hustle, not about the charisma, not about being liked. Okay. As a leader, you need to be okay with your team not liking you. And from time to time, they might fucking hate your guts. Okay. It happens. There's changes in the organization that happen. There's pay plan changes. I know a lot of us are going through and seeing that right now in real time, where they're not going to be happy with you. And it's not necessarily because of you, but because you're the mouthpiece of the organization. They're making the changes. This is how I get paid. Now I got to do something different. Okay. But there are ways to stem that from actually happening. But it's okay as a leader, and you should expect to not be constantly liked by your people. That's perfectly fine. What you want to do is make sure that they understand that you're looking out for the best of them and that you want them all to succeed. And you're going to do everything that you can within your power to give them all the tools, all the support, all the training and developing that they need to be successful. Because at the end of the day, if one of my guys comes to me and says, Omar, I don't like the way you lead because you want me to work less and make more money, and I think that's ridiculous. I want to work harder and make less money and work more doing that. Yeah, that doesn't happen. Okay. And that's the reason why you want to make sure your team understands where you're coming from and that you are there to help them be successful. Okay. And that's what happens. I should say that's the hard part for a lot of new leaders being pushed into or going into a leadership role that don't have the training and developing or haven't gone through something to train themselves and develop themselves. Because a lot of people don't do that. Okay. And it happens. I started doing that after I had joined an organization for sales and after they taught me the importance of developing myself. And the thing is, I didn't really take that to heart until after I left. Okay. That's where a lot of us need to understand like this doesn't typically happen naturally. There's got to be some catalyst, and we want to be the catalyst for a lot of people and get them to that point where they enjoy having to actually learn something new because it's different. Not only is it different, but it opens up more opportunities, opens up more doors for them. And that's my job is to give my team as much opportunity as possible because more opportunity that my team has as a whole, the more opportunity I have as a leader. And that's what my goal is. Yes, I'm looking out for them, but by looking out for them, they will also take care of me. And that's what you have to go through as a leader. Okay. Now, most reps, your top sellers that you put into as managers fail because they've never been trained to develop others. I've heard it before. Oh, well, yeah, they can just teach them what they do. The thing is, I just said it earlier. You have to learn and adapt to your people. And when you put somebody like that, whose idea of being a leader means being a manager and a boss, and you do as I say, not as I do, they don't adapt their style to their people. So it becomes harder for their people to really learn because they're only doing it in one method, one style. They haven't learned how to adjust their teaching methods, their selling methods for somebody else to be able to pick up. They haven't learned how to let their people take control of the conversation during coaching sessions. And it takes time to learn that. It took me over 10 years to develop the guide that you guys have access to. Okay. That form, it might be simple, that template may seem simple, but the psychology behind it is so powerful that it's about 10 years worth of coaching and development on that one sheet. And you guys can take 10 years to learn stuff, or you can pick it up, grab it, and use it right away and be like, wow, this is a lot easier than I thought. Training and developing is actually a lot. Coaching isn't as difficult as I thought it was, as other people made it seem, because they are not getting results, because they're not using an actual system that works. Frameworks are what's going to help you develop your team faster, and it's going to take your team to greater heights. Okay. But you have to have something that works and that's also easy to implement. Easy is repeatable, repeatable is teachable. And that's what we want to get to. Uh, Now, the other thing that as a leader you need to understand when you push people into a leadership role or when they go in and they're not truly ready for it, yeah, they'll learn on the job. They'll get a hang of it. We know our system. We know what our industry is like. We know what the organization is like. You know that you're promoting them, and if they're not truly ready for it, they're going to fail. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people with the want, the hunger to be a leader get promoted, only to get demoted a few months later because their performance isn't there as a manager, as a leader. They don't leave the organization because they pride themselves on what they do and they want that role. They want to be able to move into a leadership role. And that's not failure on the individual. That's a failure on the organization by not being able to train and develop them. I would rather want somebody who has a want for something and take time to develop them because they're going to do it right. They're going to do everything they can to learn it, as opposed to somebody who, yeah, sure, I'll do it because it's going to pay me more. And I get it. We live in a world where sometimes we need to move up in roles to be able to make more money. I completely get that. We're in a sales environment where a lot of our sellers have the potential to make as much, if not more, than their leaders. Okay. So if they're moving into a leadership role, there's a reason why. Maybe it's because they don't want to work as hard on the selling side, right? They don't want to have to work on that grind. Maybe they see themselves wanting to move into a different aspect of the company, and being a leader is going to teach them that aspect to be able to move into those different areas. Okay, that's perfectly fine too. But when I have somebody who has a hunger, who's moved in and failed and got demoted again, and they're still within the organization because the organization says, you know what, they're a great seller, maybe not a great leader, when they're ready. It is not when they're ready, it is when they've been trained and developed. That is when they'll be ready. And if they don't do that, because a lot of people don't understand what training and what development they need to be truly successful, okay, they're going to go in with the same mindset that got them the first success and are wondering why that's not working now. Because that's what they've leveled up to, but they don't know what they need to be able to level up to that next step. And their leaders, the organization, is leaving them out to dry and putting the blame on the individuals instead of taking ownership and saying, you know what, we fucked up. We kind of do this a lot. We don't have a training development program for our leaders. And we kind of just throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. That's not what we want as leaders. That's not what we want as an organization. Because the other thing, too, is when you have people that are trained and developed to take up leadership roles, people stick around longer. There's a better work-life balance. There's a better work culture. I know a lot of y'all throw culture around. If you need to talk about culture, you don't have a fucking culture. End of story. Okay. Culture is what you do. It's not something that should have to be described and be as one of your, um, you know, mission statements. If it's a mission statement, I mean, that's a red flag for me. I'm just putting it out there. And it should be for everybody because culture is what everybody does in the organization. It doesn't have to be spoken to or spoken about. It speaks for itself. Okay. So you have that. You have people that are actually learning and doing well. And you start to have a leadership pipeline, people that are trained and are wanting to move into a leadership role that actually have the capacity to move into a leadership role and be successful. Okay. It's not about, oh, are they willing to relocate? That's my biggest thing. Okay. How long have they been with the company? More than a year? Sound familiar, right? Yeah. Now, promoting without training your people into those leader roles, yeah, you already know you face high turnover. If you talk about employee attrition being an issue, it is directly correlated with the level of training and developing that your leaders get. It's as simple as that. That is not rocket science. They are strictly correlated to one another. Oh, but the job market, people don't want to work. People want to work. If McDonald's and Wendy's gas stations can hire people, people want to work. Oh, I just can't find people with the right. You train and develop people. Training takes time, yes, but it takes less time than having to go through and burn out a bunch of people. Hiring, right? Recruiting, hiring, interviewing. It is easier to take people that have a capacity and teach them by training and developing them, by giving them milestones, by giving them a ramp up period for them to actually get on board and learn things. That is what you need to do. That's what you have to work on. But when you don't, and you have high turnover, you have culture issues, right? Toxic performance gaps where one month they're up, another month they're down, and then performance stays stagnant for a while. They get written up, and then performance comes up only to come down again. I get it. I've seen it. I don't want that for my people. I don't want you as a leader to go through that either. I want you to be as successful as possible. And when you have leadership development, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But when you skip the portion that's so important, leadership development, you're not just hurting the person that got promoted, you're also hurting the whole team. Not just the team that they get promoted into, but everybody around. Because everybody else is going to see that and see the performance and be like, the hell is going on? It happens. I get it. I'd rather demote them than keep them around because they're great as an individual or they're great as a store leader. But that just burns them out. It burns people out, both the individual directly and then all those around them. Because then they also have an understanding that the company doesn't really care about people. They're not training and developing us. They're just going to burn and churn us. And that's that. But imagine having people that actually stick around because they understand that there's actual development, there's growth. There's a difference when I say there's growth because they know that you're buying locations, you're opening up new locations, and there's growth because people are actually moving up, because people are being trained and developed. I've said it before, I would rather lose somebody to a promotion or to an outside opportunity because I don't have enough positions available. I get that, but they're moving up. They're being developed and trained. That way they can look back on the time and say, this was an amazing period of my time. I had somebody who believed in me, who took time to train and develop me, who nurtured my skills and actually believed in me as an individual. And that's what happens when you, as a leader, do that. When you spend time training and developing people, you're doing something that the majority of us have never had, which is somebody actually taking their time to teach us something new, to train, to develop us, to guide us, to mentor us. And that makes a difference, guys. They can then take that and turn around and use it themselves and they can help train and develop and mentor, guide others, even if they're not in a leadership role. And that's what I used to do because I used to see people who would get asked. A lot of their peers would ask them, like, "Hey, how are you selling? Like, I'm having an issue with this. How do you do this? Can you help me?" And they started to see, "Hey, I'm making a difference in people because we're in sales. The difference that they make literally correlates to the quality of life of those individuals." And they start seeing that, and then they start getting that spark of, I like to sell. Yes, I like to interact with people, but this is different. I'm also making a bigger difference in people's lives. Like I can help them. I want to do this more. And that's when a lot of your top sellers want to move into a leadership role. They're not being forced into a leadership role. That really starts to make a difference. And if you're wondering, hey, I'm having that issue, what can I do? How can I get something like that going on? Take a look at the link in the bio. Take a look at the video description, depending on where you're watching the video, and grab that 15-minute template. It's also known as a reinforcement coaching form because it reinforces behavior, it reinforces actions. And not only do you use it as a coaching form to help develop your sellers, but you could also use it as a leadership form. I've said this before. As a DM, as a regional, you should be using that form to help train your store leaders because they need to be able to do this on their own because it shouldn't rely on you during your one or twice a month or 3 time a month visit to your locations to do those coaching guides. It should be your local leader because they see them on a regular. They have a better understanding of what areas we need better performance on. As a leader, yes, I'll stop by and I want to do a coaching form as well. So my team understands like it's not just their leader at the store that's doing it, but this is something that's coming from the top down because we want to train and develop everybody to be as successful as possible. But they have a better understanding and they have better communication, obviously, with their local people, their local leaders. And when you come around, it's just a caveat, right? It's just an extra additional topping. We're okay, cool. I'm going to do a coaching session with, my district, my regional. Awesome. Maybe they can share some words of wisdom, point me in the right direction. Maybe I want to ask them a question that I don't want to ask in public, right? Boom. It starts to open up better lines of communication so that you on the executive team can understand what's really going on in the field, what's going on in the fronts. Okay. That's what you want more of. Now, great organizations build leaders. They don't wait for them to come. They're not trying to interview and hire great leaders off the bat. They understand that leaders in the organization are built from the ground up, just like great employees. Yes, every so often you'll be able to hire a great employee from the outside in. 90% of the time, if you spend time training and developing your people, you will train and develop great employees within the organization. You have to invest time and energy to train your people. If you think after a week or two they're trained up and they should be able to perform, you're out of your goddamn mind. I don't care what previous experience they have. There are nuances to the organization that people from the outside aren't familiar with that will kneecap them or cap them at the knees. And their performance starts to stagnate, or you wonder why they're not being as, great as they were in the previous organization. It's not the individual per se. It's that there's things blocking them. So take time to coach and train your people because those coaching sessions are going to be great interactions. A coaching session is not, oh, let me do a 5 minute quick, just check in, see how you're doing. No, a structured coaching session. That is important. It as little as 15 minutes. Obviously, it can be longer, but when you have a structured coaching session, you also have an understanding of how the conversation should go, who should be talking most, and also how can I get more out of them during the conversation so I can understand that, yes, maybe I'm not seeing everything. And by having that conversation, I get a better understanding. And also, they understand both you as a leader and your people as your employees understand that, hey, a coaching session is not a fucking write up. I'm not doing a coaching session and then giving you a write up right afterwards as a warning, as a pip. No. A coaching session is a coaching session because we're doing training and developing. A write up, a pip is a different thing. They are not the same. So stop using them interchangeably because they're bullshit. That there is a strict dividing line between the two. I don't care who in HR came up with. Well, and I guarantee you, as somebody in leadership who got HRs on board with this, but a training and developing session is completely different than a write up and a PIP. Those are two completely different things. You have to understand that. Now, when you're doing coaching sessions, you're being intentional on how you're developing your people to perform. You're intentional on how you're actually making them better. You're helping them reflect. You're helping them learn to coach as well when you're trying to develop them to be future leaders. And they start to do this on their own. And yes, people are going to say, well, give me the title and I'll do the work. I'm not training you for the title. I'm training you so that you don't get fired, you don't get demoted. If this is something that interests you, hey, see how it works right now and see if you do have capability of this, right? Then, right, maybe if I have room as an assistant manager, boom, move you into those roles. I can't tell you the number of positions I created as assistant managers in my districts because of how well my teams performed. I could justify not only creating an assistant manager, but also hiring an additional 1 to 2 headcount when things were stagnant because my teams performed at a greater clip. And that's super important, guys. That's what you want to get to. And if you're wondering how you can get there faster, like I said, take a look at the link in the bio, take a look at the description of the video, grab that link, grab that 15-minute template, that 15-minute framework, and it'll help elevate your coaching sessions. It'll help elevate your salespeople. It will help elevate your training and developing of future leaders. And you will be able to get there because you have a structured way. You have an understanding that, hey, I have to be able to get them to be able to perform better, not just as individuals. Yes. Okay. We're going to take time to learn that. But I also want to ensure that I'm developing and training my people to become future leaders. And I do that by this, and this, by taking time out of my day to actually train and developing, by letting them know we are doing coaching sessions, by not opening up the fucking fire hydrant and blasting them with a bunch of information over an 8 hour or worse, a fucking 2 day training and expecting them to retain all that information without following up and reinforcing the information and the behaviors that we went over. That is why you want to do it in small, bite-sized chunks. You can cover more ground, do more, and be more successful that way because people will retain the information not just better, but they'll see the relevance of the information and what it means in their day-to-day journey. And they'll also start to coach it to other people. When they can coach it to other people, they've developed a mastery or are developing a mastery of it. And that's the important aspect we want to get to, where we want our teams to get to, especially if we're saying we want to get them to become better leaders. We want to be able to have a leadership pipeline. That is what you want to get to. Okay. So take time, grab that 15-minute framework, use it to coach your people. Let me know how the coaching session went. Okay. If you're having trouble with it, if you're trying to understand like how this can become better, let me know. Because a simple conversation opens up a world of difference for you guys. Okay. Be like Aladdin. Brand new world. I suck at singing, by the way. So, guys, stop hoping that your best rep is going to become your next best leader. Okay. Start building leaders from the ground up before you need them. So, with that, guys, I want to say thank you once again for joining us here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one.